Yo, yo, yo. Hey guys, welcome back to another awesome edition of the Best Practices Show podcast. Are you struggling with finding team members for your practice? Well, today we're going to share with you the long-term solution that you as a dentist can't afford to ignore with Alan Twigg, one of our friends from Bent Ericksen, and he shares a new perspective that's critically important to your future. So please listen up. I hope you guys enjoy it, and we'll see you soon. Hey guys, welcome back to the Best Practices Show podcast. The jam around here is to find world experts in dentistry to help you think better about your practice, your team, and your future. And we're going to do exactly that today with Alan Twigg from my friends at Bent Ericksen. We're going to be talking about how it's time right now to invest in the long game of recruiting and employee retention. Alan, thanks for being here, buddy. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Kurt. Looking forward to it. This will be great.
Yeah. Now, I often refer to you guys as one of the most trusted resources you possibly could ever use, and you're going to see why today. These guys are amazing. They do things that you should not even try to figure out. Don't even try. And they understand law and things like that you wouldn't even want to invest time in. And they also get it. Like they get it. And they also deal with hundreds, if not thousands, of dentists all over the country. Give us a little background, like what do you do? What does Bent Ericksen do? And why are you the expert to talk on the long game of recruiting and employment retention? I love it.
Yeah. We've known you and the ACT team for years, right? And, you and my father, Tim, and Adrian go back a long ways, and we're super grateful for the relationship and just what you guys do and the energy and the impact that you have. And our focus is on the HR compliance and the HR management side of the practice. And we really see the work that we do as kind of transforming the dental leader into an HR pro. And you don't have to learn all the laws and learn all the state rules and the federal rules. We do a lot of that for you. But, a lot of this stuff with HR is just basic skills. I was listening to the episode that you and Miranda did on overcoming objections. And that's just one of those classic things about basic skills that no one gets any training on in dental school. And yet there is opportunity with that. And HR is the same way. There are all these skills and little things that dentists can learn that will move the needle with their teams, have them be able to recruit easier, retain their team, stay in compliance, stay out of trouble. And it's all doable. And that's what we do. That's all that we do. We don't deal with insurance. We don't deal with, any other accounting stuff or things like that. It is just the HR thing. And it's what we're all passionate about over here. We're just a bunch of HR nerds, and we love to help people.
Oh my gosh. It sounds like life-saving. HR is a challenge. Now, let's throw a couple looming challenges that are haunting dentists right now. And that's what the goal of the podcast is. So we've got this, shortage of team members and dentists. It's not unusual for us to talk to dentists almost every day. And they're like, I have an ad. Nobody even answers the ad. And I have to find one or two new people. And then I just had some quiet quitting. That's a new phrase, that we've heard in a long time. And then I also know that you guys are big fans of the unique employment proposition, not your unique sales proposition, but now we got to shift our focus to not how do we sell more, but how do we keep really talented people? So I just threw a lot at you. Give us the big picture. What's the why?
Yeah, I think everyone kind of has a sense of how insane this labor market is right now. I mean, it is truly unprecedented. You've worked in dental for a long time. Tim's worked in dental for forever. I don't think anyone's ever seen a labor market like this before. It is truly unprecedented. And unfortunately, even though we've seen some of the quitting and the Great Resignation stuff kind of stabilizing, the forecasts from the ADA and others are not great in terms of the anticipated retirement, the shortage of folks coming out of accredited programs. I mean, it's not good. And it's not really expected to get really good anytime soon. Now, I wish that I had some magic silver bullet where if you did this, you'd get thousands of people applying for every job and they'd be, qualified candidates. I don't have that, and I don't know anybody who does. And I would be suspicious of anyone that says they have that because it's probably snake oil. But I think the big thing for us is it's all about what you can do to stack the deck and make the hiring process easier, and also to avoid the hiring process in the first place. The term I use is preventable turnover. There's a lot of turnover that's just outside our control, right? Somebody is retiring, their spouse is getting a job somewhere else. Maybe they have a medical condition, but there's a whole bunch of turnover that is within our control. And what we really saw with the pandemic was, my favorite term was the great rethink as opposed to the great resignation, because it gave all these people a lot of time to sit down during the lockdowns and think about what was important to them. And I think the conclusion for a lot of folks was they said, I want meaning. I want purpose. I don't want to work for a dentist who's a jerk. I want to be, treated fairly and shown appreciation. And I think all of that's great. There may be some offices out there where they were able to kind of get by and just sort of, if I pay you an hourly wage, then that's good enough. And I think those days are over. So what we've talked about a lot is that UEP, the unique employment proposition. And everyone's familiar with the unique selling proposition. Why should a patient choose your practice versus the one down the street? And every dentist can articulate that with, well, it's our technology and our team and our website and our marketing and all these things. The unique employment proposition is that same idea for an employee. And specifically, I want people to think about a really good employee. I mean, if you've got a toxic employee in your practice, someone that just sucks the energy out of the room, that's a different story. We certainly don't want that person to work for us. We don't want that person to stick around. If you do have someone like that on your team, definitely reach out to us. We can talk about a transition there. But let's imagine that you're sitting down in an interview with someone who's got really great experience, really good work ethic, really great attitude. Why should that person choose to work for your practice versus the one down the street? And there's so much more to it than just the wage and the benefits. Gallup does surveys all the time about why people choose a job, why they stay in a job. And yeah, salary and benefits are on the list, but they're not at the top of the list. It's things like culture, workplace environment, growth opportunities, the way the rest of the team interacts, just the overall feel of the place, what it's like to be an employee in this business. And that's what really counts for a lot. So, long answer to your question there, but that's kind of the overview and how we've been really approaching this current labor market, is just keep your really awesome team members, do everything you can to stack the deck and figure out how to make your office unique.
Yeah, and let's talk about some of those things. I always love the research and the data that you guys bring to the table. Anything come to mind off front that could help us understand the perspective of what's going on in the world right now?
Yeah, so one of the things we do is we track and monitor new state and federal rules. And so this is something we emphasize because a lot of the new state and federal rules that get passed, they're not just annoying boilerplate HR stuff. They're actual benefits that can really move the needle with team members. And it's so critical that practices are aware of that to avoid misunderstanding. So in the period from 2014 to 2018, during all 5 of those years, we sent out 74 policy updates nationwide. Then in the 5 years from all of 2019 through the end of 2023, we sent out 280. So a huge increase during that time. And this was not due to COVID. This was things like new mandatory sick leave laws, paid leave, family and medical leave, expanded breastfeeding and nursing rights, pregnancy disability accommodations, things that really impact the day-to-day running of a practice. And it's so important that every office has some kind of a mechanism for staying up to date with those changing rules. Because what you don't want to end up in is a situation where an employee comes to you and says, hey, I'm allowed to do this thing now. And the employee handbook, maybe hasn't been updated in 10 years and the doctor isn't aware of it. So that's one thing that's just kind of low-hanging fruit. It's so important that you're clearly communicating your expectations so that everybody is on the same page. And the way that you can do that real easily is with your policy manual or your employee handbook, also with your job descriptions. I think a lot of times job descriptions kind of get cast aside as, just this boring HR thing, but they are incredibly helpful. They're the unsung hero in HR documentation. Right. And I know there are people out there right now going, compared to lasers and all the cutting edge dental technology, job descriptions do not sound very sexy. And I agree with that. But job descriptions are so beneficial in the hiring process, performance reviews. When they're written properly, they have a section on duties. They have a section on attitude requirements, things like the ability to work well with others, the ability to accept constructive feedback. I mean, how often do we have issues with team members that are in that category as opposed to the technical skills of the job? So there's a lot of these kind of things that are just basic foundational elements that I think go a long way for folks to make everything be crystal clear with their employees and avoid misunderstandings, because misunderstandings are actually one of the leading causes of turnover, and misunderstandings are absolutely preventable. And it doesn't take a whole lot of time, doesn't take a whole lot of money. You can get all this stuff in place, and then maintaining it is a piece of cake.
Yeah, obviously, I'm a big fan of yours. You guys just document it and update it per state, So when it comes to at-will employees, part-time, even lunch times that are required in some states, and we don't need to talk about California, but that's a country on itself that has its own rules. And when I hear about some of this stuff, I'm like, how in the world could they possibly require that of dentists? And a big piece of this, let's go back to the first thing. A big takeaway is like, if it isn't written down, it doesn't exist. Some dentists have done this, but they did it 10 years ago and they didn't outline like all of these things like time off, like how it all works and benefits. And I certainly don't want to like create any angst here, but the goal in the podcast is like to share information. It's real stuff that's going on. But we actually have a dentist that, in his policy manual that he created years and years ago that had dust on it, said, hey, while you're employed here, we'll do your dentistry for free. Well, he terminated the employee and she went and got a quote for a full mouth rehab from another dentist and sent him the bill. He's like, I'm not paying that. Well, the lawyer said, you are going to pay that because you said you would take care of their dentistry and you didn't make time for it, blah, 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 blah. Now I'm just saying this like, I don't want anybody to do that. But when that dentist told me that, he's like, you need to tell other people, like they have to have this stuff written down. What does it mean to take care of your team for dental care? Does it include their family? Does it include the lab bill? Like what? You just can't write one sentence because the sentence is like totally like interpreted by the legal person. And if you've ever been sued, which I've been sued twice, it isn't about winning or losing. It's like, how much money do you want to spend to prove your point? And so like both times I'm like, this is the dumbest thing ever. And then my attorney, who's been my attorney both times, he's like, listen, I think it's the dumbest thing ever. But like, they're locked in and they're going to do whatever it takes. And you just need to know how much you're going to spend to like make this go away or prove your point. And I'm like, I'm not losing on principle. And he's like, well, then you're going to spend a lot of money. Now, I'm having fun with you guys if you're listening, because this stuff isn't often the most exciting thing. But I also want to emphasize the importance of specific is terrific in all of these things. Don't you agree?
Oh, big time. Yeah. And I love that you brought that stuff up because it's so easy as dentists and really for anyone in this world to fall into this right and wrong thing where maybe you terminate someone, you don't have any documentation, the person happened to fall into a protected class, and you think, well, I didn't fire them because of the protected class. I fired them because they were a bad employee and I'm in an at-will state, so I can just get rid of them. And in your mind, you think, well, I'm in the right because I did this and I followed, this thing called at will. And so I'm right and they're wrong. And like you said, this isn't about right and wrong, because when you get that scary letter from the attorney that says, you're a horrible person, we're going to sue you for discrimination and all that, it's not about right and wrong, or it can be. You can certainly go all the way to court with it, but like you said, no attorney is going to recommend that you go that far because it'll be insanely expensive. So immediately it becomes a settlement thing. Now, if you have your ducks in a row, you have a policy manual, the person signed off on it, you have job description, the person signed off on it, you have performance reviews, you have documentation of the deficiencies in their performance. What happens is, when you do get that scary letter, you send all that off to this other attorney, and the other attorney then goes to the former employee and says, okay, look, we have a choice now. We can choose to fight this, but it's not looking good. And I'm not going to work for free and represent you in a case that's not looking good. So my retainer is $5,000. And if you pay that, then yeah, we can go ahead and fight this. And typically at that point, the whole thing goes away. So that's why you have these documentation pieces and other things in place, is that it makes the whole thing a $200 problem instead of a $50,000 problem.
Totally agree. And again, I don't want to stay on the fear side of this. There's so many benefits that are way beyond the fear and the bad stories. Another thing that I learned from you guys that I absolutely love is we talk about retention all the time. And you guys have research to prove that like 50% of the onboarding process determines retention. Like how important, like when I heard that from you guys, I'm like 50%, like, yes, it's pretty close to 50% of like how well you onboard someone determines how long they stay. Now, let me add one more piece of value. It's no different than finding patients. Do you want to spend a ton of money finding a whole bunch of new patients that don't know anything about you? Or do you want to keep the amazing patients that you have and double down on the investment so that the lifetime value of what they bring to the practice, and I'm going to change the word patients to team members, is so important. So I love the whole theme of this. Like, let's not try. The number one thing we got to do is like, let's fix the problem at the source so that when we bring new people in, they're going to want to stay long-term. So help us decode that. I don't even know if there was a question in there. I just threw that at you. So,
well, yeah, onboarding is so critical. And I mean, I hate to use this analogy because employees are probably hate this, but it is very much like when you get a puppy and you got to train the puppy early on and you have to invest in. Now, to be very clear, employees are not puppies. I'm not comparing employees to dogs or anything like that. But right. It is just this idea that you have to put in the effort in the beginning. Yes, it's a sizable amount of time and energy in the beginning. And your temptation, of course, is to just show people something once and go, okay, they got it. I can move on. But if you invest in that onboarding, the check-ins, the regular onboarding, really making sure that this person is shown absolutely everything, how you do things, and the way that you approach little course corrections. I think the most important thing people have to remember with those little course corrections in the first, say, 6 or 9 months that you have an employee is you've got to approach it from a place of empathy and utilize every ounce of emotional intelligence that you have. Because you got to recognize that this person doesn't know you, they don't know your team, they don't know your systems, they don't know your patients. Just because they worked in one or more dental practices in the past does not mean that they just automatically get it. And so if you approach them from this thing that's like, well, what the heck? Kirk, I thought you said you knew how to use Dentrix. What's the matter with you? But it's a matter of saying, okay, I can understand where you're coming from at your previous job. Maybe they did it this way. At our practice, this is the way we do it, and this is why we do it. And really getting into that place of compassion and empathy and recognizing that you really need to start from a place that people are doing the best they can and assume the best intentions of others. And if you do that in your onboarding, your little course corrections as you go along will be fantastic. And what you'll do is you'll actually start making deposits of positivity. Because when you start out with a brand new employee, your bank account is basically zero. And you have to build this bank of positivity because it's inevitable that eventually you will run into trouble or little hurdles or something that is relatively serious with an employee. Either they're going to get upset, you're going to get upset, and you got to have some kind of a good buffer of positive trust and understanding and mutual respect that's built up. And a lot of that comes in that onboarding process. And it's just super critical in those first few months. So yeah, onboarding, super critical, invest in it, and it'll pay dividends down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. You know how you build a great practice? It's one person at a time, whether it be a team member or a patient. And you know this, if you're new to any environment and you're a new employee, you're picking up on everyone's emotions right away. I remember some of my first experiences in dentistry watching two chairside assistants talk in the back room, and one goes, "Yeah, this place is a mess. Like this place is a disaster." And she was saying that to a new employee. I'm like, okay, well, we're setting her up for success here. So, and all of these behaviors and cultural things, they have to be systems. So, what you're saying is exactly right, but they can't be efforts like, oh, I'm going to take everybody shopping or we're going to go bowling to improve our culture. No, it's got to be a real commitment of systems and clarity and understanding. And we got to work slow enough, not faster, slow enough where people are like, I know how this works and I can expect this. And nothing upsets a great team member than when you consistently tolerate a bad one too. So you've got to set the bar for how people behave in the practice, or you're going to scare away some of your best team members. I've had this happen to me where a team member came to me and going, okay, today's the day. It's me or her. I can't do this anymore. I refuse to be treated that way at the place I work. You have to pick. And you're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And you do nothing and you lose both of them. So right. I'm here to tell you, what Alan's talking about is crazy important. Now, I do want to cover the compliance thing because compliance is probably one of the most misunderstood words. We don't even understand it enough to dig into it. We're like, no, I don't even want to talk about that. What does HR compliance really mean? What does that really mean?
Yeah, I am going to dive into that in just one sec. I want to say one quick thing about culture, Please. Since you brought up culture. So there are obviously a ton of definitions of culture, and I think all of those definitions have value and provide insights and give you as a business owner something to think about. One of the definitions I really like is that culture is basically like a 5-star average of every single interaction that every single person has throughout time. So that's the interactions between the team and the patients, interactions between the management team and the employees, interactions like you brought up between employees. It's almost like if you imagine that every single interaction got a 5-star rating or 1 to 5, and then you average every single one of those interactions over time for years and years and years, that is basically your culture. And I like that definition because, like you said, it's not something that it's a one and done. It's not something you put a slogan on the wall and that's your culture and you don't ever have to think about it. It is an all day, every day kind of a thing. And it's ongoing for the rest of your time. And I also like that because it's an average. We all have bad days. We all have off days. We all have days that we're just not on our A game, and that's okay. We don't want to obviously do that every single day, but if we have a 5-star rating 99% of the time and we have an off day, that's okay because it's an average over time. So I think that gives people a little bit of grace, a little bit of a little bit of cathartic. If I have an off day, it's not the end of the world. So I just wanted to bring that up. Now, compliance. So HR compliance fits in with all the other compliance areas that dentists are already familiar with, right? So you have your charting and your record keeping and all the rules that you have to follow from a patient record standpoint. You've got OSHA and all the infection control safety stuff that comes with OSHA, and you also have HIPAA. And of course, you get some training on some of that in dental school, HIPAA maybe, depending on when you went to dental school. And then employment compliance or HR compliance is just another one of those things. With all of those compliance areas, you have federal rules, you may have state rules, you have things that change over time. And then with employment compliance, there's an added layer, which is that it varies very widely based on how many employees you have. So in one state, there might be a pregnancy disability protection that kicks in when you just have one or more employees. In another state, it might kick in when you have 10 or more employees. So it's really important that you know what your state laws are, as well as the federal level, because you actually have to follow both federal and state. And that sometimes creates this question, well, which one do I follow if there's a difference between federal law and state law? And the answer to that is generally you have to follow the one that is the most stringent on you as the employer. And the one that is the most stringent is the one that most benefits the employee. Classic easy example would be, let's say federal minimum wage is lower than state minimum wage. The one that benefits the employee more is the higher state minimum wage. Therefore, that's the one that you would have to follow. So there's this idea of your number of employees, there's federal and state. And then, like I mentioned earlier, it's this thing that things are always changing. They're always adding new laws or they're changing existing laws. And when that happens, it's a mess. You got to comb through the bill and find the stuff that's relevant for you. You have to draft a policy. It's a lot of work. And so, of course, that's why we recommend working with somebody who just does that for you. And then you don't have to worry about whether you're doing it right.
I love it. I love it. Gosh, I have so many questions I want to ask you. I have to be respectful of your time because I could keep you for a long time. I want you to wrap this up in a bow. Like, give us some final thoughts on, the team member shortage as it continues to haunt us and why we have to invest in the long game of recruiting and employment retention.
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is, and I'm sure this is not going to come as any surprise to any of the Act Dental listeners, but it's a matter of just committing yourself to taking action in these areas. And I also recommend starting small. It's real easy to kind of get fired up and go, all right, I'm going to do everything right now. And of course, if you do that, you'll go big and then you'll get distracted or it's going to be too much. And so start small. If you don't have a policy manual or an employee handbook, get one. If you haven't updated yours in a million years, find someone who can update it for you. Get job descriptions, get documentation, find a way to stay up to date over time. And also with that comes this idea of some of those things that come into play for retention. So if you're not familiar with the book, The 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace, make sure you get that. If you're familiar with the book, The 5 Love Languages, this is that same thing applied to the workplace. We recommend it for all dental practices because the book is very short, it's very easy to understand, very intuitive, and that appreciation stuff has been shown through Gallup and others to be extremely impactful with employee retention. Doesn't take a lot of time, doesn't take a lot of money. I'll tell you one quick story on that. We were at an event earlier this year at the University of Washington Dental School. There was a guy there who, he was a dentist, he had his team, and one of the things he did for them was he bought everyone Starbucks every single workday. And he had calculated that over the course of a year, that cost him about $5,000 per year just in coffee. Now, some people might hear that and go, oh my gosh, that's outrageous. Oh, why would you spend that's crazy. Well, we asked him, well, do you feel like you're getting an ROI on this? And he said, unequivocally, yes. I am getting better employees, productivity, better production, happier patients. I have high employee retention. So you add all of that up, and he's basically getting millions of dollars in ROI on his $5,000 coffee thing. So it's a matter of investing in these things that make you a unique and different and awesome place to work, so that when you're sitting down with that ideal candidate in an interview, you can say, you should work here, and here's why.
Yeah, I love it. Gosh, what you guys do is so valuable in dentistry. I know there's a lot of listeners that are going to want to know more about what you do and where to go. So tell our listeners, Alan, where to go and learn more.
Yeah, check out our website, just bentericksen.com. And if you'd like to set up a consultation call with us, just reach out to us. We can get that going. We're happy to learn about you and your practice. We are similar to Act Dental. We are a support company. We have technology that we use, but we are a support company. We're here to support dentists and really make this whole crazy world of HR be as easy and approachable as it can be. So don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'd love to chat with you.
Yeah, I can't say this enough, but these guys are one of the best investments you'll ever make. It's great peace of mind. They know exactly what they're doing. Don't even think about it. Just check it out. So, Alan, thank you so much for being here, brother. I really appreciate it.
Yep. You too, Kirk. Thank you.
Awesome. Stick around while we say goodbye to everybody else, but thank you guys for listening to the Best Practices Show. Hey, if you enjoyed today, please do us a favor. Hit the share button, share this with your friends. Keep sending us suggestions again and again and again, like you always do, about things you guys want to see, and we'll keep lining them up. So until we see you guys next time, or you hear from us next time, keep watching or keep listening to the Best Practices Show. You guys enjoy your day.